Hi everyone, meteorologist Brian Bennett. Here's a picture taken a short time ago from space showing Hurricane Florence moving on shore. And as you're probably aware, the storm did move on shore at Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, 7:15 this morning, winds of 90 miles per hour, a Category 1 hurricane. Of course, you may have seen my other post or perhaps heard other folks talk about how Category 1 really doesn't define the intensity of this storm. It's over 400 miles wide. It's producing storm surge of 9, 10, 11, 12 feet. It's going to drop 30 plus inches of rain. So we really need another intensity scale to measure this type of storm. Here's a picture taken by my buddy Jeff Petrowski a short time ago, showing obviously a tree down over the road, but this just shows you the type of problems that the rescue crews will have today, tomorrow, and throughout the weekend trying to reach folks because the roads are going to be blocked by trees or perhaps flooded. As you can see this picture here showing near Wrightsville Beach, the huge waves crashing at the end of this subdivision, and of course the storm surge coming on shore. Here's the latest path from the National Hurricane Center. The winds are still sustained at 90 miles per hour. And we could see that drop a bit over the next update from the National Hurricane Center. Nonetheless, the track of the storm is expected to continue to the west-southwest. It's moving right around 5 or 6 miles per hour, and then it's going to move slowly off to the due west and move right over Florence, South Carolina. And we're talking about, this is by Sunday, so this is a whole weekend event for the Carolinas, a very slow-moving storm, and then the remnants of it will move up over northeastern Tennessee and eventually back off to the northeast. But honestly, the storm is going to largely tap itself out in the Carolinas. Parts of West Virginia could see a bit heavier rain, and eastern Tennessee, maybe some gusty winds, but once the storm gets up into parts of New England, it's pretty much going to be said and done for. All right, I wanted to show you the satellite real quick. Let me drag that down and apologize for the flashing here, but I guess my computer's getting a bit overloaded. Nonetheless, you can see that the center of circulation is right around the Wilmington area. And notice how the storm is already becoming a little asymmetric, that it's becoming a little top heavy. And that's what generally happens when storms move ashore and they encounter the friction from land. They start to get a little lopsided, and that's what's happening. So that's actually not good news for North Carolina because they're going to continue to see the heavy rain on the northern side of this storm for many, many hours and even throughout the weekend. All right, here's a look at the winds. You can see where the winds are blowing onshore, and that includes areas like Topsail, North Carolina, Jacksonville, North Carolina. You're still getting the onshore winds, where areas like Myrtle Beach are getting offshore winds, which means you don't have to worry about storm surge at the moment. And that may not even be that big of an issue for parts of South Carolina, but I'll talk to you more about that in just a second. And there's a couple other very important messages that I really hope to relay over the next couple of minutes. First of all, storm surge. This graphic is from the National Hurricane Center, showing you where the worst inundation or the worst flooding is expected. You can see the little red colors here, and these are far inland and these little inlets here. And as you may have seen with one of my other posts on Facebook, some of the worst storm surge flooding with any hurricane can easily happen not right at the shore, but actually far inland. The water is funneled in these inlets by the winds just forcing the wind into kind of a tight space. That happened with Hurricane Sandy. The worst storm surge flooding was actually at the end of the Long Island Sound and also around the New York Harbor area as well. And this is happening with this hurricane as well. New Bern area, you see the red color there? That represents upwards of about 9 feet of water in an area that normally would not even be wet. So bad storm surge flooding for the New Bern area right along this particular inlet here. Same thing goes as you head up to the north. This appears to be near Washington, North Carolina. The orange color representing inundation of about 6 feet. So that's 6 feet, again, over an area that's normally dry. Red represents 9 feet. The yellow represents about 3 feet over an area that would normally be dry. So the worst storm surge flooding is happening right about now, or it's about to happen with high tide, and we're looking at the strongest winds of the storm blowing this water inland. So again, right about now is when we're seeing the worst storm surge flooding, and of course now being about 10:30 on Friday morning. So bad storm surge flooding on some of the inlets there, but also don't want to diminish the storm surge flooding that's happening near the center of the storm, right around the Topsail Beach area, Surf City. You can see some of the yellows and oranges here. That represents between 3 and 6 feet of water coming on shore in areas that normally would not see it. And of course, wave action here as well. Waves are one thing you don't have on the inlets, but you have waves and surge. And that's what we're experiencing in the Topsail Beach area. And then heading farther south, you're still seeing lots of yellow, meaning the water is coming on shore in excess of 3 feet in areas that normally wouldn't see that water. So that gives you kind of an idea of the worst storm surge flooding, where it's going to be. I did want to show you quickly farther southwest as I'm kind of trekking along the map here. Once we get into South Carolina, I'm not expecting the storm surge flooding to be quite as bad. We're looking at, first of all, tides that aren't going to be as bad in in South Carolina. So here we are in North Myrtle Beach, and we're looking at about 1 to 3 foot inundation along most beach area locations. So the track of the storm, the timing of the tides, the shape of the coastline is going to be such that the storm surge flooding shouldn't be too bad in the Myrtle Beach area, at least compared to what we're seeing in parts of North Carolina. I did want to mention tides real quick, and this may be a factor that isn't mentioned quite enough because it does play a huge role in the impact that storm surge can have on land. So here's a view at the high tide cycle for Wrightsville Beach. Again, keep in mind, Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, near Wilmington area, is receiving onshore winds right now. So they're receiving bad storm surge flooding. Well, now you factor in high tide. High tide cycle is about 4.5 feet or so. So that's 4.5 feet. That's almost the height of a human being higher during high tide. So excuse me, at 11:46 a.m., high tide occurred in Wrightsville Beach, and then low tide occurring at 5:58 this evening, another high tide occurring at midnight tonight. So the two time periods that Wrightsville Beach area want to be most concerned about will be right around noon today and again at midnight. That's 4 feet of additional water that wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the astronomical high tide bringing in that extra bit of water. Head down to Myrtle Beach. This is the tide cycle for Myrtle Beach, and not quite as much. We're looking at about a 1.5 foot tidal swing between high tide and low tide, so not quite as much water being brought on shore because of tide in that area. So some good news in parts of South Carolina that storm surge flooding shouldn't be nearly as bad as what we're seeing in North Carolina. This is an interesting image. This is a microwave satellite passing, and it kind of focuses right in on the center of circulation. Notice how right before the storm made landfall, it did do a little bit of wobbling and then turned to the west right into Wrightsville Beach. And then the last couple little frames there, you can see how it's moving to the west-southwest, which should keep it just over land and just a little west of the Myrtle Beach area, unlike what the European model was forecasted yesterday. This is the RAP model, not talking about rap music, but RAP is in high resolution rapid refresh. And this is a precipitation outlook that stretches 35 hours into the future. So this is over the next 35 hours. Notice how North Carolina just continues to receive buckets and buckets of rain. We're talking about trillions of gallons of water falling from the sky, and this is just going to continue as the storm is just barely dragging itself to the southwest. And you can see the track there if you look kind of closely. The center of circulation is right about there. It's going to move off to the southwest, staying just inland from Myrtle Beach, and then drift over to parts of central South Carolina. And then we'll start to see that turn to the west over Florence, South Carolina, and again making that turn to the north. Notice again how the storm is kind of top heavy, not as much precipitation on the southern part. So that means that parts of southern South Carolina not going to see nearly as much rain as there is in northern South Carolina and North Carolina. And again, these swells of rain just moving in and coming down at 1 to 2 inches of rain per hour is going to drop a lot of rain. All right, here's a look at the forecast wind speeds from the RAP model. And there's the storm is moving on shore. And let me fast forward. Let me go ahead and fast forward to this evening. Here we are at 8 p.m. this evening. The RAP model has a center circulation just around North Myrtle Beach area, perhaps Sunset Beach on the border of North Carolina and South Carolina. Winds are still blowing on the order of 60 to 70 miles per hour, so up around hurricane force winds blowing onshore. And this is by later this evening. That's after dealing with these strong winds all day long. But nonetheless, Wilmington and this area has quite a day cut out for it. And even areas farther inland, here's Fayetteville, North Carolina right here, and you're looking at wind gusts on the order of 70, 80, 85 miles per hour possibly. So some very strong winds, even as you head a little bit farther inland. All right, so let's fast forward a bit more in time. Let's go ahead and go to Saturday morning. Let's Saturday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. And wow, check this out. North Carolina still receiving very strong tropical storm force wind gust, maybe 60 miles per hour or so blowing on shore. So just a constant fan in the face of these folks that are in this parts of North Carolina. And notice that really lots of North Carolina seeing strong winds. This stretching all the way into Fayetteville, even as far west as almost Charlotte, North Carolina, and heading down to South Carolina. Excuse me, we're looking at wind gust on the order of 50 to 60 miles per hour as well. So very strong winds continuing for a long period of time for parts of the Carolinas. And then let's go out to the end of our animation here, and you can see again onshore flow, strong gusty winds around 50 to 60 miles per hour. We're even going to see 50, 60 mile per hour wind gust in parts of well inland, South Carolina, and even parts of the upslope areas of the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina as well. Excuse me. And some of these wind gusts are going to take down some trees. They're going to take power out. Of course, power is already out in the Wilmington area, but as the storm spreads to the southwest and eventually the west, it's going to knock out power for many inland locations as well. So power crews will definitely be busy. One aspect of hurricanes that's not really spoken about a whole lot is the tornado risk. We have a lot of tornadoes with hurricanes. In fact, Florida, believe it or not, actually has perhaps the most tornadoes of any state in the country, and that's because of our tropical activity. It has nothing to do with the other type of storms we experience year-round, but a hurricane can drop numerous tornadoes. This animation here shows you how on the northeastern quadrant of the storm, wherever you see those bright blue colors, is where the greatest risk of a tornado could occur. So we're looking at, over the next 35 hours, the possibility of numerous tornadoes occurring in parts of North Carolina. Obviously, we get tons of warning when it comes to hurricanes, but very difficult to warn with tornadoes that drop out of hurricanes. A lot of times, these tornadoes may be moving at 50, 60 miles per hour, happen very quickly, touch down quickly, cause a lot of damage, maybe a few injuries from a potential tornado, but nonetheless, very little warning time with that. So for folks that are local in this area, stay glued to your radio for the latest on any tornado warnings that may be issued by the National Weather Service. All right, here's a look at the rainfall total forecast. And in the purplish color there, that is rainfall that is around 25 inches or so, anywhere from about 15 to 25 inches. And keep in mind, this is on top of about 8 to 10 inches of rain that's already occurred in many areas, say around Jacksonville, North Carolina. So you're looking at storm totals anywhere from 30 to 40 inches of rain. So a lot of rain falling in this location. Now, over the next 36 hours, the rain not quite as heavy in parts of South Carolina. Florence area seeing maybe about 5 inches of rain or so. Northeastern North Carolina seeing a lot more, exceeding 10 inches of rain in that location. So lots of rain falling, which is going to present an issue not only today and tomorrow while the rain is falling, but this may be something you're not really aware of, that the worst inland flooding could potentially occur after the rain stops. It takes a long time for all the rainwater to seep into all the area, lakes and rivers. So we could see some of the worst flooding from rivers and neighborhoods actually occurring maybe on Monday, Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday of this week. This map you're looking at here shows where major flooding is expected on area rivers. So this is near Cape Fear River in North Carolina. You can see major flooding expected near Burgaw, North Carolina, major flooding. In Wilmington area, we're looking at moderate flooding, so the river will exceed its banks, but not quite as bad as some other locations. Lumberton, North Carolina, the river is going to exceed its banks by by quite a bit. Excuse me. Same thing goes for Florence, South Carolina. We're looking at some pretty massive flooding that's going to happen in that location as well. Just to give you one example, here's Conway, South Carolina, and the river is expected to continue to increase even after the rain has stopped, and even crest at a 18.5 foot level, which would be a record for this area. The river's never risen that high, but notice also when this is happening. We're seeing the river crest on Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. So the rain's going to end by Sunday or Monday, but the rivers are still going to rise, and this is going to flood out a lot of neighborhoods. So you're going to see video for days of water rescues that are going to be occurring in neighborhoods adjacent to these rivers in the Carolinas, because that water level is just going to continue to rise, and that's going to be a major concern for days to come. All right, wanted to quickly mention what's going on with tropical depression Isaac, which has weakened quite a bit. Fortunately, it's expected to continue to stay south of Puerto Rico, and wind shear is going to beat this storm up as well. So it looks like it won't be much more than a tropical depression as it moves south of Jamaica. Still a storm we'll want to watch pretty closely as it makes its way westward. Though here's the latest European computer model. And here is the storm represented by the yellows and oranges here. And notice as we go into the future that the storm actually diminishes and kind of washes out from the wind shear, so that by the time we get into next weekend, the storm really isn't even represented on the computer model here. With that said, some uncertainties, possibility it could get into the Gulf and redevelop, so I wouldn't completely write it off, but at this point, really just not looking that impressive. Let me quickly show you the radar picture here before I wrap up this webcast here. Couple of little things to show you here. First of all, as I mentioned, tornado warning right now for areas northeast of Jacksonville, and there are going to be quite a few tornado warnings. We're going to see some tornadoes dropping, and again, warning time with these is not as great as we would like to have. Center of circulation has moved just to the south, basically south-southwest of the Wilmington area. Again, you can see the heavy rain band spreading the heavy rain and the onshore winds bringing the storm surge as well. We can actually look here and see how much rain has already fallen. This is digital storm total accumulation, and let me check the rate. Okay, so we're using the Moorhead radar here, and let me actually stop the animation so it won't loop, and change over to our little inspector tool here. And this shows you how much rain has fallen. So Jacksonville, North Carolina, you've picked up about a half a foot of rain so far. Head eastward, and we're looking at about a foot of rain that's already fallen. And this storm is really just beginning from a rainfall standpoint. So a foot of rain already on the ground in this area northeast of Jacksonville, North Carolina. And we're going to see an additional 20-30 inches of rain fall. Head over towards the Wilmington area. We've seen about a half a foot of rain as well, but a whole lot more rain to come for this area. So that just shows you the potential of the water threat here with this storm. All right, guys. I always end up making these videos a little more lengthy than I intend to, but I always want to make sure that I get out the most information I can. That's the latest on Hurricane Florence. Hope you guys stay safe if you're in the path of this storm. This will probably be the last video update I do, but I'll keep you updated with pictures and information, or if anything changes. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and have a nice Friday.